Welcome to Doublespeak. I'm your host and producer Casey, and the team joining me today is Liam.
My gut says it's true.
And Oscar.
I am!
Weeding out the lies. Daniel.
I speak pig English.
Making them. Oh, and Amanda, my fellow Ute fact checker. Here on Doublespeak we play a little game. Daniel has a lot of random, useless and useful knowledge, so we're going to put his skills to the test. Each episode, Daniel becomes an expert on a new topic, which he explains to Liam and Oscar. They then guess whether he's telling the truth or not. Liam and Oscar get a point if they agree with each other and get it right, otherwise Daniel wins and gets the point. Okay, hello, welcome back to Doublespeak. The guesses are sitting a little bit behind on 1 point, while Daniel runs ahead with 3. Hopefully this time the boys can close the gap, but I guess we'll find out. This week, colour theory, shrimp, and satellites.
What?
Take it. Yep.
Hey?
What a segue.
They're going to get more chaotic from here on out.
I'm so
Oh gosh,
confused.
yeah, no, we gotta make that a thing. That would be cool.
Just get worse.
Why are we planning this in an episode? Just start talking.
We are talking.
Okay, cool. Why is it 3?
Huh? Well, so the overall subject is colours, what we can and can't see, and other things related to it, which is where the shrimp come in. Because shrimp have good eyes.
Oh, I thought it was because we
okay.
can't see them.
What? No,
I'm
mean,
sorry,
Shrimp aren't that small.
I'm very tired. Please continue.
Okay. So, a little background on how the eye works. So, as you may know, we can see. So everyone tends to have eyes, and that how our brain interfaces with the world in a visual manner. So our eyes have receptors called cones for the three different colors of red, green, and blue, which is also partially why screens, etc., use red, green, and blue. But that's also because you can make pretty much every other color with it. So because of the 3 that we have, depending on how much of whatever color of light they're receiving. So say there's a lot of blue, not so much green, and a lot of red, you'll see a sort of purpley color, right? So it kind of depends on a ratio of how much they're being, what is the word? It's not triggered, but it's sort of along the lines of triggering a switch. For example, a combination of red and green would make yellow. So we are only really perceiving the red, green, and blue parts of the visible spectrum, and then depending on the combination of colors, we see certain things. And we know that the kind of different wavelengths of red, green, and blue change with frequency of the photon. When we're talking about seeing color using cones and rods, we're talking about a subtractive color model. If you were to mix multiple paint colors together, you would get black. If you were to shine red, blue, and green light in the same place, you would get white. Which is rather interesting. You know, you always think like when you're a kid, if you just keep mixing colors together, they'll get some neat. You just get muck.
Yeah, it's got brown.
Mm.
Like brown with like rainbow tint in it.
Yes, yeah, especially if it isn't mixed right.
I was a kid, it never was.
So white light is the combination of all of the visible spectra of light, which is red, blue, green, for us at least. And this is called the electromagnetic energy spectrum. So we can only see a small amount of light, which is the visible spectrum of colors. But on the spectrum is gamma rays, X-rays, infrared, ultraviolet light, microwave, radio waves, and long-range radio waves. So that spectrum is from the lowest frequency to the highest frequency. So if you get like a mental picture, right, of if someone's in hospital and they're linked up to the machine that shows their heartbeat, it's kind of like a sinusoidal wave.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we picture each spectrum of each color of light as one of those waves, the period, which is the point between the start of one wave and when it gets to that same point again further on down the wave, is different between the different colors. So infrared has a smaller period and a higher frequency than blue, right? And green is in the middle. So infrared has an even higher frequency. And microwave, radio waves, etc. are even further above that. So like your Wi-Fi will be 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, which is the frequency of the wave that is being emitted. And ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays on the side of blue gradually have even smaller, even lower frequencies. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And this all explains a lot of stuff about what colors we see. Like the sun. The sun doesn't appear white, right?
Yeah.
It just burns out
It
your retinas.
appears the color of if you take blue away,
Huh.
Ah.
right?
I guess. I can't see it right now.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is down. But green and red together make a sort of yellowy color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the blue light, since it's lower frequency, doesn't travel the same way as the other colors. And it tends to get scattered in the atmosphere. And then you have blue sky and blue sea.
Nice.
And there's a bunch of other stuff that affects it. But
Like
Yeah.
shrimp.
well, the shrimp is more, they have very, very special eyes. So the Manta Shrimp is a small marine crustacean known for the aggressive and lightning-fast ways they capture prey. So, as mentioned before, we can process red, green, and blue, but manta shrimps can perceive 12 different channels of color. And they can see ultraviolet and polarized light, which are what we can't see with our naked eye. We need other instruments to be able to see those or like perceive it. So the manta shrimp's visual system is very unique. They're known scientifically as stomatopods, and they have compound eyes. So flies?
Yeah.
Yes.
How their eyes look like a bunch of little hexagons together,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just tons of them. So that's a
Yeah.
compound eye.
Oh, okay.
Made up of 10,000 small photoreceptive units.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Some of these photoreceptors are arranged in strip-like arrangements across the eyes, so they see their world by scanning across that strip. Like a camera would, kind of. Have you seen there's a really cool photo someone holding a... what are they? They're holding a wine bottle. And I think they've popped the cork on it. But you can see the cork in multiple places in the photo because of the camera taking a scan across over and over and over again. Something's happening too fast. It can, be seen in multiple places.
So
Kind of like if you take a really bad panorama.
Yeah, like the popped cork went faster than the shutter speed of the camera, and it kind of like couldn't quite take it all in one.
Yeah.
Huh. Cool.
Yeah. So rather than relying on heavy brain processing to compare colors and determine what they are, as most vertebrate visual systems do, like ours, the eyes, their photoreceptors, interpret the information by themselves.
All right.
So they know what it is before they can think of it?
Well, it's more kind of division of labor.
Okay.
Instead of their brain doing all the work, the eyes have already processed the image before it gets... The eyes have already kind of sorted everything out, processed the image, then it gets sent to the brain, rather than kind of the raw information of what it's seeing being sent to the brain to be processed.
Yeah, like our brains do.
Yes, yeah. We have a photo.
Ooh.
Of the camera thing. With helicopter blades.
Is this the one where it stays still?
No, it's a still photo, but yes, that also happens if they're spinning at the same frequency as the camera.
Ah, it's like a bendy pencil.
Ah.
Or that person's just really good at balancing a 2-ton helicopter on their head.
Yeah. Well, you might see every now and then you see it in news reports and stuff. There'll be a helicopter, and it's just floating there.
Yeah.
And the blades won't be spinning and everything.
And it's just that that's at the perfect frequency for the shutter of the camera to not be able to like pick it up. It's also kind of how we see with if you're watching a car driving, it gets to a certain speed and then you watch the rims and they seem to spin backwards. That's because your eyes can't refresh fast enough to see the rims moving forward.
But yeah, it's because every single time the camera takes an image, the blades are in the same place, so it just looks like they aren't moving. So yeah, insights based on understanding the color receptors in a manta shrimp's eye can be used to inform designs for even better satellites and other visualization processing that scans objects of interest, instead of making a two-dimensional image as our eyes and normal cameras do. So alright. So, yes, helicopters. The blades tend to work pretty poorly with the shutter speeds of cameras, etc. So yes, shrimps helped us make better satellites that can see more and do more. And it's very, very odd, the concept that there's a lot that we can't see. Comparatively, the visible spectra that we can see is a lot smaller than certain other animals. Although it is a lot bigger than others. You can find some really, really cool videos on what it's like to be a rabbit, because they see a lot more blues and greens than reds. So like people have gotten videos and then put a color filter over it to make it look like you're a rabbit. But yes, on the subject of stuff that we can't see, colors that don't exist. So the human eye can distinguish about 10 million colors. And what's really interesting is that where you grow up and who you grow up around, and sort of what culture you grow up in, helps determine the amount of colors you can see. There was a study done on a tribe in Africa who were very heavy foragers, and a selection of greens was showed to them, and they had names for every single green and can identify them all separately. But those greens, when showed to someone from England, couldn't tell the difference. They all looked the same green, but they're all different. So your environment can affect not necessarily the colors that you can see, because everyone has the same eyes, they'll be able to see the same colors, but it's whether you can differentiate between them. It's definitely something that can be taught or learned.
Huh. I wonder what ones we got here in good old New Zealand.
I feel like you're probably going to touch on this, but I've heard that there is a difference between male and female. Often females can see more colours in the rainbow, like one more colour at the end than males can, or something like that.
Males have a higher rate of colorblindness, or being colorblind.
Yeah, we see movement.
And the theory goes that it stems from males being the pursuing hunters, chasing after prey, not needing to determine colors, but more motion and movement.
Yeah, and watching out for predators and stuff like that.
Yeah, and being able to determine between colors and other stuff would be very beneficial for foraging. But it's rather interesting. So yes, there's 6 colors that we see that don't exist. One of them is magenta. Magenta isn't real.
Magenta.
Yeah, there's no wavelength of light. Wavelight. That sounds so much cooler. There's no wavelength of light that corresponds to magenta. It's a combination of blue and red. And from what we talked about before with the positionings of the red, green, and blue, what color would red and blue make?
Purple.
Purple.
Yeah. But it makes magenta.
So what's up with that?
So it's a kind of guess from our brains to try and figure out what it would actually look like. So yeah, magenta is kind of like a halfway between blue and red. And it's because of them being on opposites. It's kind of like a wraparound color, right?
Almost sounds like our brains didn't study enough for the test.
Our brain was like, these two shouldn't exist in the same point in time.
But they do.
But they do, so I don't know what to do with it.
I guess I'll make something up then. That's worked before, right?
It happens, like our eyes making, sort of filling in the gaps and guessing, happens with a lot of other stuff. Like plain white piece of paper. If you're in a room with only blue lights, and you have a piece of paper that you know is white, you'll see it as white, right? You won't see it as blue, despite it actually being blue
light.
Because it's covered in blue light. You will see it as white because you know it's white. I mean, kind of jump the gap.
Like, I think sort of. Like, you can imagine it's white, but I think there is always this kind of blue hue that your eyes will take in.
Yeah, well, there's the hue, but if someone asked you what color that paper was, you would probably say that it's white. Even
True.
if you walked into, say it was a room at a museum to demonstrate this, you walk in, and the paper is actually blue, but it just looks identical to how white paper looks under blue light. You'd probably just say that paper is white.
Because you're trying to associate with what you've seen before.
Yeah, that's what you know before.
Is there some sort of effect like that happens when you close your eyes too long, or I don't know, look through goggles? Because I know I used to get that as a kid. I'd go underwater, then come up, and I'd have blue hue on my eyes for a while.
That is kind of it. Having the hue is more your eyes adapting to try and see the other colors. Because if you're seeing a lot of blue, then the blue cones in your eyes are getting tingled all the time. So when you start seeing other colors around you, those ones are still the most active. So it takes a wee while for it to catch up. Right? Because your eye's going to be more used to seeing blue light, so the blue light that you do see is a lot more prominent because they're already fired up. So seeing the other colors isn't as, vivid as the one that you have been seeing a lot of in that amount of time.
My eye's like an old TV that got left on too long.
No, I've definitely been thinking. I've got a certain question I want to ask once we get to the end, and that will make my mind up on certain things.
Okay, yeah, because there's truth to this. I'm just wondering
if it's all true or not.
Yeah, because I've heard these things before, but I'm like, is it things I've heard, but I can't remember the exact name for it? It's like if someone described Pythagoras' theorem to me, but they called it John's calculus. I'd go, oh yeah, that makes sense, and I'd say, and I'd agree with them, even though it's not John's calculus.
It's Pythagoras.
Yeah, but the math is still the same.
So Oscar, what you brought up before about the blue light is very interesting. So it's all to do with the saturation of the cones. So if you've seen a lot of that color, then you kind of start making it up, right? Because if you're seeing a bunch of it, your brain knows it's there,
and it just
so it can kind of cut on processing time by just assuming it's there, right? Because instead of needing to constantly pick up blue, your brain can just be like, oh, we know that that's blue.
Yeah.
And then when you look away, it's like, oh, that's not the same blue. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then it kind of takes a little bit of a lag time. And there's a really cool chart. This is called
I've seen this chart, I think.
Chimerical color demo.
Maybe not. Not by that name.
Hey, they could have changed the name on us though, but it's the same thing.
Ooh.
Why does that change our perception of the colours?
Oh, there we go.
Well,
so
it makes it brighter.
It's just easier to read.
Do you want us to do this?
Yeah, sure.
So what do we do?
How long are we supposed to stare at them for?
10 seconds tends to work.
Each?
Yeah, so stare at so for each row, stare at the left one for 10 seconds, and then when you glance at the middle one, you should see something that kind of resembles the third one. So the third one, the third column, the approximate rendering, isn't important. It's just kind of this is what we think you'll see sort of a thing.
And it's correct so far. I've done 2 of them.
Yeah, it's nuts, eh?
I did all 3. Yep.
It's literally just the saturation. You're like, oh, we see something different.
Yeah, that's your eye mixing the colors because one of them is fatigued. So you'll get the yellow fatigue, the green fatigue, or the cyan fatigue. And then when you see the block, you look at it,
and then
and you mix them together.
Yeah.
In the case where the light gray is going over to the white, it just kind of stays light gray. So that's a little bit of the lag time thing that Oscar brought up.
So our eyes are essentially an old TV with a low ping.
They're very similar to cathode ray tube screens.
Okay.
We're not electrical engineers.
CRT monitors. Everyone knows what a CRT monitor is. You know the ones with the big booty?
The old
ones.
The real old fat cream ones.
Yeah, that's
I don't know what they're called, but I know they're
so
fat.
Those are cathode ray tube monitors.
Yeah.
We use them a lot in you get digital ones now. But you get a bunch of oh my gosh, I cannot remember the name of them. These little about the size of a very large brick, so they're not actually that small, like a large cinder block. And they've got probes on them, and you can test electrical devices, and it shows you the wavelength, like waveforms and all that sort of stuff, and signals. But I can't remember the name. So cathode ray tube monitors, there's a thing at the very back of the monitor, and it shoots out a beam, and then when it hits the front of the screen, it excites a film, and it produces the color. Which is why if you film them, they've got that sort of scanning thing over them, because it goes from left to right, left to right, left to right, so on and so forth.
In a row.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's kind of like old TV screens, how they used to like scan, like shoot the radioactive particles.
That's what they are.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time you've used your degree since you graduated.
No, I've used it a bunch.
Oh.
You have no idea how handy it was during the show, man. Holy cow, people don't understand batteries.
Yeah, that checks out.
Batteries? Nah, I get that. In case you don't know, everyone, Daniel's an engineer.
Electrical engineer.
Uh-huh. Yeah, do you want to bring that up another 10 times?
It's been twice, so Daniel, never mind.
Yeah.
He has something to fall back on if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, no, this is my backup plan.
What other information do you have for us, Sir Daniel?
So, back to the spectrum of light. So when you're seeing light, you're not seeing a single photon bouncing back a particular color. You're seeing a whole bunch of them, because they're all very, very small. And your brain averages out the amount and the color of them. So if you have both 400 and 700 coming at you, your brain knows what?
I don't know. You're telling us.
He reading off the page and doesn't know what he's reading.
Casey, what is this?
What? Highlight what you're looking at?
I feel like y'all could have used the 20 minutes that I was late to go over that information.
No, I skimmed over it, but it's the fine stuff of just it being absolute,
Please.
like, grammatical hell.
Is this just Casey typing?
So I'm going to read out the actual sentence.
This does not count towards the truth or lie. We just want to hear it.
Your brain knows the difference than green, although it is the median, is different from magenta. I read that, and I genuinely thought I was having a stroke.
That
Because
sounds
it's
like a
so
stroke.
close to making sense.
It reads like it's been translated into another sentence and then translated back into English.
Yeah.
But no, that's fresh out of my brain.
Now, Dana, what you need to do is you need to look at the X in the top left and then look back at the sentence and you'll see the rest of it.
Oh no.
So say you've got a 400 hertz photon, bunch of 400 hertz photons coming at your eye, bunch of 700 hertz photons coming at your eye. Your brain knows the difference between them and will average it out to the color in between.
Okay.
So that's how we get magenta.
Which doesn't actually exist.
Yes, so if your brain sees blue and red at the same time, at a certain amount,
Which shouldn't
it's like,
happen.
oh, halfway between is magenta.
Hopefully this sentence makes sense.
But it is different than just seeing what is in between.
Yeah.
So if you see something at 500 hertz, your brain will see that as different than the halfway between 400 and 700.
Although 500 is not halfway between 400 and 700.
Well,
It's 550.
yeah.
But yeah, I get what you mean.
But it goes in steps of 100, so...
And it also depends
At
how
least.
many photons of each you're
Yeah.
getting.
So if one's a higher amount, then it's more potent, then it's going to be closer to that frequency.
So that decides whether it rounds up or down, or does it always round down?
It's just halfway. The measurement for like the blocks, if you put them on a line,
Goes
but
up
the
in
specific
hundreds.
one as in gaps of 100.
Yeah.
But the eye,
Yeah.
it's not in numbers.
Okay.
It just sees stuff.
Yeah, I was meaning if it's 550, does it always go down to 500 or does it go to 600?
No,
But
no.
okay.
So like,
It just
this
sees death.
is really important because although, for the example, whatever is at 500 or 550 isn't magenta, but if you see the two other colors, you see magenta. Despite being at about the same point, maths-wise, they're entirely different colors. So it's a very important thing for survival, being able to differentiate between a bunch of different stuff. But yeah, that's what we got.
So, really, we should be seeing purple, but we're seeing magenta because our brain is stupid. Is that like when you see blue? Because blue and red are supposed to be opposites. Like, blue is supposed to not exist when red does, and red is supposed to not exist when blue does.
Purple is like a little bit less than blue. But yeah, the combination of red and blue is kind of yellowish.
Yeah.
We see magenta.
It's nice to know that my conscious and subconscious brain are both idiots. Is that it? Is it time for us to...
Yeah.
Alright. You had a question, Liam?
Yes, I do. Okay, so hold up, like way back at the start, you were talking about waves and wavelengths and frequencies.
Yeah.
Can you please tell me your information on that again?
Which part?
Like you were saying like long radio waves and radio waves and infrared and ultraviolet, and you were saying like one of them has the highest frequency, one of them has the lowest, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So there's gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet, the visible spectrum, infrared, microwave, radio waves, and long radio waves.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes on a scale of an increase, or a decrease in period. And the period is the measure of time between the start of a wave and where that wave ends and starts again, right?
So like the peak and trough.
Well, a period tends to be the first peak and then a peak and a dip, and then it returns to the same point.
Yeah, it comes
but
back
just
to the
one
midline.
period down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it repeats over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So the gamma rays have a longer period, so a flatter wave than X-rays. X-rays have a slightly shorter period, so a steeper wave. And then so on and so forth, up and up and up and up and up, all the way to radio waves, long-range radio waves.
Okay, thank you.
Because they're measured in gigahertz, etc.
So what did you get from that, Liam?
Well, I know that shit wrong.
That's wrong?
Because long-range radio waves have the lowest frequency, aka the larger distance, is in a flatter curve. They have the longest wavelength, and I don't know if it's the lowest frequency, the highest frequency, but it's like longer wavelength, flatter
I
curve.
got it run the wrong way.
You better be right about your information here, sir. Please. Because that's coming in with a true or false. Because I was about to say, like, if you're false about that, you're false about other information. But if you're like, oh, I said the wrong thing, then how do I know what you're saying right and wrong?
I was going to put forward an argument whether they'd be tricking me or not, because he specified a type of shrimp that can see 12 cones of light and has a very aggressive hunting method. Whether he said the name of the shrimp was the right shrimp, I know that a type of shrimp like that does exist.
Yes,
Manta shrimps.
I've heard about this. We did visual perception in psychology lectures.
I was also meaning that when he mentioned the aggressive hunting method, I remember that because it can very easily break your finger and rip it off, even though it's the size of like your pinky. It is a very strong and aggressive hunting method. It's considered one of the fastest movements on the planet. Whether the name of it's correct, I don't know. That was the thing that worried me.
Yeah. As far as I could tell, all the stuff he said about the cones and how they operate is correct, because that's what I learnt in psych. Whether he's used incorrect terms, though, like the concept of it, of like, this is how it works, yeah, that was correct. Whether he's used the right terms or not, I wasn't listening that closely, so I wasn't paying that much attention.
Shrimp did help us to design satellites. That part was true.
So,
Or
Daniel, are
I'm a
you
dumbass.
saying that you said the information wrong and got it around the wrong way, or are you saying that the information that you said is what is written on the page for you?
I can't disclose that, because then,
Shit, alright.
depending on the answer that I give, that's going to be black and white.
Alright, yeah. Okay. Shit. Well, I guess we're going for either a lie, which is 20% true, 80% false, or the most truth, which was 99.99999% true.
Yeah, that's literally the thing that's throwing me. It's like, I listened to you say it and I was like, we did physics together, Daniel. I know we did physics together. We did waves, and you know this shit is not what
Yeah.
you're saying. But then you're like, I said the wrong thing. And I'm like, but now you just made me double question whether you're false. Because I know what you said is a lie.
I did believe the parts of it when it was talking about the saturation with the eyes, because he described it with my experience and it was right.
Yeah, all that stuff, that seems correct. It was literally just that first one that I was like, those, like, what you were saying is incorrect, and I know Daniel knows that because he took physics and he's an electrical engineer and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I know you know that the longest wavelength is actually the long range radio waves, and the shortest, the highest frequency, and the biggest peaks, shortest difference between the peaks and trough is the gamma rays. And he said the opposite of that.
Do you know about the hertz that he was using?
Did you give info on the hertz?
He said they go 100 blocks.
Oh, I mean, that's just whatever diagram people use. People can use like super specific ones that go down to 50, whatever. But the graph that he had in front of him was in hundreds. That's why he said that.
Okay. Excluding that beginning thing with the rays, would you believe it?
Everything else I believe is true.
So are we going to go on our back foot and bet all of it being false on that beginning thing? Which
I don't want to.
Should we go true then? A lot of it I believe heavily to be true. Like the shrimp, the saturation with your eyes, me being an idiot. A lot of those things I believe are very true. So
see, it's the difference of, was Daniel being a dumbass and genuinely said the wrong information, and he's got and so everything is true, or he's double bluffing us on it by saying the wrong information. Then when we call him out on it, he's like, "Oh, I said it wrong," and so then we think it's true and it's actually false. So, but Daniel's more likely to double bluff, but I don't know how good he is at double bluffing. I feel like,
But the rest of it you believe.
Yeah, rest of it I believe. So should we settle for true? And if Daniel's double bluffed us, then good job him.
I believe so. Yeah.
Right. We vote for true.
Can we get a drum roll?
I just hit my mic a bunch.
Oh, don't do that.
Yes, it's true. I messed up the radio wave thing, and I realized about halfway through when I started talking about the sun. And as I was talking about the sun, I was like, "Oh no, that doesn't make sense."
Yeah,
right.
Because
the longer period makes it to the Earth easier, which is the red and the yellow light.
Yeah.
The blue can't make it as far because it's a shorter wavelength.
It burns out. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why the sun appears to be orange, because it can't make it through the atmosphere and it gets scattered.
Yeah, I was because everything made sense except for that.
I'm so glad that random documentary I watched when I was 12 about shrimp came into play.
I mean, I was going to believe him either way, because most of the everything about the cones, receptors, how our brains work, how we receive light and all that, I've learnt about in visual perception and psychology. So I'm like, that's all true. I know that. I did that 3 weeks ago. I know that shit. So it was just whether that initial thing was a blunder or a blatant lie, and you were just trying to trick us out on that like 10% of information.
Was it a blunder or a bluff?
Which I feel like that's a bit of a scummy thing to do, you know?
Yeah, no, that was a mistake on my part. I
Cool.
had to make a guess either way, and I just went with whatever one came first, but then I figured it out like immediately after.
Yeah.
And if I started backtracking immediately,
It would be
then
sus.
Well,
it's kind of a yikes.
that was almost a good sus though, because
It almost tricked us.
Yeah,
Well, Amanda and Casey were on my case just before in the chat about how we should tell you guys immediately, and I was like, no, because this is not only a lot more interesting, but they've clearly got it right.
Yeah, like you guys
They
were gonna
know.
guess it either way, but
It was lucky that the one thing that I messed up, Liam knew for sure was wrong,
yeah.
and then
Oh, yeah.
the rest was right. Otherwise, it probably would have been best to tell you, but since that clearly wasn't affecting your decision much, apart from just adding to some interesting
Yeah.
conversation.
The
That
whole
was
time I
fun.
was sitting here, like, listening to you talk, I was like, I need to ask him about this. I need to ask him about this to clarify exactly what he said, so I know I can be, like, sure on if he was correct or wrong, because I know that shit's not true.
The only reason I asked about the hertz was I was like, I mean, in music we use different amounts of hertz, so does that work? And clearly it was just my brain trying to draw invisible lines to find a theory that didn't exist.
So Amanda has introduced a new definitions for truth and lies, which I find quite amusing. So, so for truth, everything has to be truthful and factual. However, we are not experts, so there might always be a margin of error, but we're never going to go out of our way to like purposefully lie to you guys if we are telling the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah, that's
And
all
then
good.
with lies is just whatever combination of like truth and bullshit that we want.
Like the chinchillas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
Just
much of
enough
the
truth to
chinchillas
throw you
was a
off.
lie?
80%.
Like the majority of it.
Oh, okay.
They-
I
like
feel like
we
it was
got like
actually a little bit more than 80. It was a good amount.
where they lived and the scientific name was the only thing that was correct. Everything else was just like
Jaboas.
Jaboas
Yeah,
and like
Jaboas.
Entirely made up.
yeah.
Yeah, looking back on it, I hate myself because you mentioned needing to get shots if you got bitten by a chinchilla, but you called them as passive creatures, and I'm like, why the fuck would they bite if they're passive? Oh well.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, and then you
passive
just go,
creatures
"Oh, well."
still bite. You've met a rabbit, right?
yeah.
Rats
Like-
bite, rabbits bite.
When they're threatened, yeah.
Even Keiko gave me a nibble the other day.
Everything bites when put in a corner. And what's a cage? Just an advanced corner.
So I just realized something.
Yeah.
I don't think we've gotten it right by calling it false before.
No, you've never guessed a lie.
We've never guessed you on the line.
That's interesting.
Well, there's plenty more where that came from. Okay, well, that was fun. We'll be back next week where we attempt to rediscover a lost city. Maybe.
I think it's just called Christchurch.
Yeah.
Also, Oscar, the one that can break your hand is
Ah,
the pistol
right.
shrimp.
That's what I was meaning when you said the aggressive tactics and the 12 cone. I went, I've heard about this from another shrimp that can break your hand and stuff. But like I said to Liam, he could be saying the wrong name or it could just be wrong. But I know that thing exists.